Medical Intuitive Insights with your host, Dr. Gloria Warren, is a program that presents topics on medical intuition, holistic opportunities outside of mainstream society, and scientific research as applied today. Topics range from online intuitive readings to interviews unveiling alternative healing modalities and discussing them with inspirational leaders. Dr. Warren is the bridge within holistic arts while stressing the balance between the spiritual and physical self. So now, please welcome the host of Medical Intuitive Insights, Dr. Gloria Warren.
Men, have you been more irritable lately? Feeling tired even after a good night's sleep? Or less interested in things that once truly inspired you? What happens when testosterone begins to decline? Well, welcome to Medical Intuitive Insights. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria C. Warren, and medical intuitive epidemiologist and more than 40 years experience. And today we are exploring the rarely discussed topic, manopause, the other midlife transition. Not menopause, but manopause. Of course, it's not the actual word that describes it, but it is to me, so hence manopause. Yes, men experience hormonal changes too. It's quieter, more subtle, but just as powerful and life-shaping. What happens when testosterone begins to decline? How does that affect a man's energy, emotions, and spirit? Let's explore the medical explanation, the symptoms, and to even the lifestyle changes with our guests, Coach Mike and Nurse Peggy. But first, the science of menopause, medically known as andropause. That's the technical term. This stage marks the gradual decrease of testosterone, the hormone responsible for strength, energy, mood, and libido. Unlike menopause, which has a clear endpoint, menopause unfolds slowly, sometimes over a decade, beginning somewhere around the age of 40, maybe even 50. It depends on the person. Testosterone drops about 1% per year. The endocrine system, particularly the hypothalamus and pituitary gland, signals the testes to reduce testosterone production. This change ripples through the body, affecting muscle mass, metabolism, mood, and even motivation. Add to the effects of modern life, stress, poor sleep, processed foods, environmental toxins, and the male hormone system can easily lose its balance. It's not weakness, it's biology, and it's natural. So today we have Coach Mike and Nurse Peggy with us. I'm just so grateful you're here. Coach Mike, you want to tell them your expertise area?
Sure. I do integrative life coaching, which involves the body, heart, and mind, the integration of the body, heart, and mind for optimal wellness. Yeah, and this is a definite subject that we all need to address, both men and women, because we need to get a clearer understanding of how to work with each other and how to commune with each other, in the light or in the wake of a lot of these changes that are taking place, hormonal and medical changes that are taking.
Exactly. And we also have Nurse Peggy with us. She's an RN, and I know that she has a lot of experience dealing with men, perhaps in their menopause stage. How are you doing today, Peggy?
Wonderful. Thanks for having me today. This should be a fun topic. I've noticed that men would never typically label it, the menopause, but a few honest ones will call it their midlife crisis.
Oh,
That's when
yeah.
they get
Yeah, I've
tattoos.
heard that before.
They'll get tattoos if they never had tattoos before. Somehow they think that makes them more manly.
Yeah.
And, maybe they'll get fancier cars or more sporty cars, things like,
Or a
as if they were
motorcycle.
back in their second
Yeah,
childhood,
Yeah.
that's right.
But it's not all bad. I mean, it can be fun things that they're doing, maybe. But let me just
Oh yeah,
list up some Right. I'll list some of the symptoms and we can discuss it a bit, okay? The sign of
Sure.
menopause, like I said, can be very subtle. Men chalk them up to aging, stress, and work pressure, which can very well be the case. But there's also physical symptoms: fatigue, low energy, decreased libido or erectile dysfunction, other changes of such, weight gain, especially around the midsection. Gee, that sounds like something women go through there. Loss of muscle tone, hair thinning. I see how common that is, and sleep disturbances, increased sweating. They even get hot flashes, just like we do as women. So, emotional and cognitive symptoms, irritability, sudden mood changes, depression or low confidence, anxiety, restlessness, trouble focusing, or brain fog. These are the body's messages, the signals that energy, hormones, and emotions are asking for recalibration. And I'm sure both of you have run across patients with these symptoms. And what to you, Coach Mike, what is the main complaint men have when they come to see you?
Well, some of them approached these changes differently, and they don't always complain about them. But what happens is, as a side effect to not dealing with what is going on and not being aware of what's going on,
Mhm.
some people can fall into a depression, or it can result in high anxiety for many men. Um, the important thing to note is that it's important to understand what's happening in your life, what these
Mhm.
changes mean, you know, and what people call male menopause or andropause. For some people, it can be a little bit confusing. It can be um, I don't misleading because to give you an example, is as women approach menopause, there is a rapid decline and the cessation of fertility, and women stop menstruating altogether. In men, as you mentioned before, it's a gradual process, and
Right.
fertility for men doesn't always end when that process begins. So men can father children as late as 80 years old. Um, but it's also important to notice that as these changes happen, our emotional response to them can either exacerbate or mitigate those symptoms. And it is important to realize, as I said, what's going on so that you can know what to do about it.
I
Yeah,
think
I
it's
think.
also important to communicate with your partners because
Yes,
the pattern that I often see, and at the time I'm seeing men and going through this, I'm also looking at grandchildren and adolescents, the male part, and as an adolescent, you're bragging about things you don't even understand. Maybe you've seen it on TV or in a book or something, but you're still your experience, and you're telling your friends like you did it firsthand. And
yeah,
that's something like that's a man thing, but a lot of times marriages, break up, and it's because they're not communicating, and the man's thinking it's not me, it's her. She's just not as responsive anymore. She's not interested, and then he goes and looks for a young thing, and that doesn't often work that the real well. Uh,
that's true.
Yeah.
That's very, very true. The interesting thing about testosterone in men is that it does trigger emotional responses. It can, well, and maybe not so much trigger, but it can cause emotional changes. I remember in my 40s, and I was probably in the best shape of my life, and that was like more than 30 years ago. But
Mhm.
it's when I felt that extra drive in the gym, wanting to work out, wanting to push myself, wanting to challenge my body. I didn't think so much about challenging my mind and my heart at that particular time. But
Mhm.
as I grew into my mature years, even in my 60s, I still had that ambition to, I don't know, stay young. And so I continued to go to the gym, and I continued to monitor my eating and all of these different things because I did notice the emotional changes with
Mhm.
the drop of testosterone over those gradual years. Um, as is with many men. However, there there are men that don't notice those changes happening because it is so gradual. And all of a sudden, it's like waking up, and all of a sudden you have wrinkles. And you're
You're
going,
like,
"Who
what happened? Yeah.
happened?
Yeah.
Who is this guy here? What's wrong with
Right.
me?" Um,
You know,
but
go ahead.
go ahead. I can
I
talk
was going to
forever.
ask Peggy, Peggy, being a woman, I know one thing really surprised me the most, but I wanted to hear from you. What surprised you the most regarding your patients as far as like symptoms per se? What was there anything that really you weren't expecting, but then you saw somebody with one of those a specific symptom?
I think with women, I do see at least maybe it's more socially acceptable for them to act out their anxiety, that are related to these
Oh, right.
changes.
Yeah.
Where a man's got to be a man and be tough and keep that stuff. Unfortunately, we still, think that men have to be strong and they shouldn't be crying, and
Mhm.
um, that's really, you know,
Yeah.
nothing wrong
That's
with a sensitive man, and the
right.
relationship probably is a lot healthier if
Yeah.
you acknowledge your feelings, but it hasn't been socially accepted. And for the longest time, for years, I really despise those drug commercials. But
Mhm.
that little blue pill that they've been advertising, and then after like 5 years, all of a sudden there's a littler blue pill or it was a pink pill, I think, for women. And
Mhm.
I'm not sure who thought of that. Whether the man thought that it works for him, maybe he can get his wife back on board or something. Um, but I
Yeah.
think if as we go through different life stages, intimacy is not always that physical what you did when you were 20. Intimacy
Sure.
is a different, actually a much richer connection, and men feel like they're a failure because maybe they just want to hug and snuggle, but that's what that's part of a life stage. It's a normal reaction too.
That's
Mhm.
true.
I
you
know
know
in big pharma, I worked on a erectile dysfunction drug, and they started to recognize me as the Midwestern erectile dysfunction expert. And I was getting calls from doctors all over the United States. And
Whoa.
I guess I had, for the study, I had to find all the references and research and then only send in to the FDA the ones that were applicable. And, there's so much involved with that situation. But I think my biggest surprise was the level of emotional crying sometimes. I have one person that comes to see me, and his thing is goes in the bed, comes home, goes straight to the bedroom and cries all evening. And I'm like, you need to talk to your wife. She's already been through menopause and she understands the emotional aspect. And I think that open communication is the most important thing in any marriage and with your partner. I think if without communication, you have nothing. Nothing. You have guesses and assumptions, and it's not something that, oh, here we go again. She wants to talk. No, 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 it can be short, one or two sentences, and that's it. Honey, I just want to let you know I'm here for you. And I understand what you're going through, but I'm here. Something like that.
and add
We
that to that,
never
I'm
did
not
that
going
part.
anywhere, because
Yeah,
we built
yeah.
something for
Right?
you know
It was sad
But
because she
I have
never
a
did that.
couple
Mhm.
cute anecdotes that happened over the years. I was an older nurse in that I'd had several careers prior to nursing, but I was still somewhat naive in that area. And I was like a brand new nurse working at a Catholic hospital, and we had a 88-year-old man who had just had one of those penile implants put
Oh,
in that have to
hold
be
it right there.
manually pumped.
Don't lose that thought, because
Oh,
you're
yeah.
listening to
Oh, I'm
Medical
not
Intuitive
watching. Yes,
Insights, Dr. Gloria
we'll be
Warren.
right
Today
back.
we're covering the truth about menopause, the other midlife transition. It's time for a change, but also of awakening when the body and mind and spirit begin to rely in powerful new ways. And stay
Absolutely.
tuned. When we return, we'll hear Nurse Peggy's story. We'll be right back.
Mike Zoric, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zoric, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zoric has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Master of words, powerful player.
It's okay. Welcome back to Medical Intuitive Insights. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Warren, and we're continuing our discussion on Manopause, the other midlife transition. Before the break, we talked about science behind the hormonal change. And before we go deeper into the emotional, spiritual renewal that often follows, Nurse Peggy was actually telling us a story. So please continue, Nurse Peggy.
Okay, in nursing school, we learn to be non-judgmental, and when you're young, sometimes you don't even know what you're supposed to be judging if we're judging. But I was supposed to do post-op care on an 88-year-old man in a Catholic hospital that had just had a penile implant put in. Back then, it was something you manually pumped up when you needed it to work. I still don't understand how that worked, but I was given specific instructions to tell his wife that it was for his prostate. It turned out this man at 88 had a girlfriend on the side. And it's hard not to, and I was younger, much younger then. And I really struggled with, my trying not to let my attitude show, because I just thought he was the biggest creep around, and what's wrong with him? He's going to have a heart attack. And how's the woman going to feel, and that happens a lot, by the way. Men that are trying to prove themselves, they show up in the ER, not without their wife. But there was another time when I was a patient as an older person, just a few years back, and it was a stroke floor. I didn't have a stroke, but they were taking advantage of the funding that they had. Any symptom related could have been the furthest possibility. They put you on the stroke floor. Well, I had a brand new nurse, and she's setting me up in the bed, and she's mumbling to herself. And I said, "Well, what are you looking for?" And she says, the bed alarm. And then I realized that I'm old enough to have a fall risk bracelet on my arm. And that got me kind of a little upset. But instead, I looked at her and I said, "Hey, which button's the vibrator?" Well, her face got so red. And this was only within the last 5 or 6 years. And I knew that she was thinking, "Oh my God, old people have sex. That's not talked about." But you got to have a sense of humor throughout all the stages of life. And, and yes, old people do have sex, and, sometimes it's not in the traditional way. Intimacy is more important, but it's all part of life, and accepting yourself and loving yourself as you are.
It's true.
Yeah. So while menopause is a physical situation, it's also deeply emotional. Many men begin to question their purpose, their careers, or their sense of identity even. And hence a lot of men do strange things or out of the ordinary that they would normally do. But the same confidence that once came from achieving now asks to be rooted in authenticity. Relationships may shift, not out of loss, but out of longing for a deeper connection. This is often when men crave meaning, spirituality, and emotional understanding, even if they never spoke it before. They may actually be a little on the edge because they don't want to speak it, but you can help them go through this. It's not a midlife crisis per se, it's a midlife awakening.
For sure.
So, yeah, what do you think of that, Coach Mike?
That's very well said. And I think it's very important for men to realize that, we're not unlike the seasons that change. When winter comes, people want to go away. They want to find a warm place to be, and they want to keep doing what they can do in the better months, of the sunnier months. But aging is very similar in that as we age, our purpose gradually begins to change. Our sexuality is very much a part of that. There are many things that sex does for us, and it's not just to produce children. It's not just to have sex with a partner and enjoy that as entertainment, if you will, but it's also it's something that is worthy of respect at a higher level. I call it a sacred experience. Napoleon Hill talked about sexual transmutation, um, noting that sexual energy is very, very strong, very, very powerful, but it doesn't always have the same purpose, especially as we age. As we age, that energy can be transmuted to give us um, more wisdom, more insight. It can actually awaken our pineal gland to where we can begin to trust our intuition. Much like women are granted the recognition of being more intuitive than men, but it's not something that is only for women. It's something that we can harvest, and we can actually bring it into a fruition, a form of wisdom, if you will. And sometimes there are very specific techniques to doing that, but looking at our age and the gradual changes that take place ought to be welcomed. It's a signal that our life purpose is undergoing changes as well, and our temperament surrounding our sexuality, and even our social interaction is due for a change, and people begin to respect that as we respect it. The way we
No,
respect ourselves, people will respect us as well.
it's just, the sense of identity, I think, they lose, even though they don't need to, but because of the drop in hormone, they don't feel that vigor and the strength. And so they change their sense of identity. And maybe it's just to a softer part of themselves, but maybe that's not what they want. So we'll talk more about medical things you can do on the next section. But, I just keep thinking about how identity crisis has a play in this. For
Yeah.
some, not all, none of these
Right.
symptoms are absolute, but some of them,
Well, I
get
think
close.
the exposure to TV and the internet, that the
Mm,
commercial that just plays incessantly, ask your doctor if your heart's healthy enough. Well, that can have a positive and a negative reaction to a man that's not
ah,
sure. And and if your heart's not healthy enough for that physical activity or going up and down the stairs or anything, there's other thing, you do what you can. We had this old joke, use it or lose it, and men seem to worry about that more than women do, because women figure if they lose it, they'll just find something else to do, but the way we were raised and the constant external influences,
mhm.
because we're so busy working and running through life without even noticing things around us, that that aspect of ourselves is kind of distorted also.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that being said, what happens as men change, sometimes the midlife crisis and the way we respond to that, whether or not it's really a crisis, I think sometimes we can make it into a crisis when it doesn't need to be. It could be mainly the cause as opposed to the
Fully
effect
agree.
of the
Yeah.
change. So, we can look at it as something to worry about and something to do something about, and then, go off track by doing that. or we can look at it as something that is there and that we can understand in a better way and do the most with what we can as organically as possible. In my book, if you can't do it naturally, you need to question whether or not it's worth doing, because someone like you were talking about the little blue pill, and some of the things that men do in midlife crisis. There are tons of things that we can do in midlife without creating a crisis. We can make
Right.
it something that our young men, our children, look forward to. I can't wait till I'm your age, because now I get to do this. I get to spend time with my grandchildren. I get to be a wiser person. I get to do all of these things, which are actually a comfort to men, some
Hmm.
men.
Yeah.
And
Note
I
to
think
our audience. Go ahead.
a lot of times men are reluctant even to talk to their doctors, whether doctors are male or female.
Right.
And so they'll look for herbal things and things like that. And a lot of men, as they get older, and women too, if you're on blood pressure pills, things like that, one, high blood pressure is going to affect your performance and the blood flow to all
Hmm.
areas of your body. But
For sure.
a lot of the herbal things, as a nurse, I have to say again, you've really got to talk to your doctor if there is a physiological problem.
For sure.
It may not be related to sexual performance at all. It may be a sign that something else in your body is not working right, and the doctor would know what the clues are. So
Right.
if anything doesn't feel normal, you should talk to your medical provider.
Just keep in
Absolutely.
keep in mind, note to the audience, just because we have these symptoms that we've stated and then discussed some of them, picked and chose some of them, it doesn't mean you're going to have all those symptoms. So if you look, maybe you're looking for guidance, you can check the symptoms, see, oh yeah, I have a couple of those symptoms. It doesn't mean you're going to have all of them. So don't take those symptoms and all of a sudden think, oh no, I'm doing this now and now I'm doing that, and don't make it something more than what it is. Try to be minimalistic, but if you see certain symptoms that maybe you want to talk to somebody, that's where people like Coach Mike come in. He's amazing. He is so wonderful at what he does as a life coach. It's phenomenal. I have yet to run across any life coach that is just intelligent to the nth degree as far as emotions and responsibilities and weighing, balancing things out in your life. He's fantastic. And someone like Nurse Peggy, she has all the medical background and experience with patients with a lot of these symptoms and the situation. So you can always contact her as well. We'll give you the contact information for both of them at the end of this uh, program. So, but things, you begin to turn inward, seeking wisdom, compassion, and purpose. That's why we're here. That's why we're talking about this openly. This is a real physical situation, but it's not something to be afraid of. It's a transition. Seek wisdom, seek more information, talk to people that could help you, like um, Coach Mike or Nurse Peggy, and try to seek out, so what is my purpose in today's world? Why am I here now? There may be something else, that your purpose for being here during this transition and perhaps after the transition. So you're tuned into Medical Intuitive Insights, where we bring you science, spirit, and self-awareness together. When we come back, what we've all been waiting for, the medical intervention options and holistic lifestyle support. Stay right here. We'll be right back.
Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Dr. Gloria Warren, and you're listening to Medical Intuitive Insights. Let's explore potential medical and holistic approaches that can work hand in hand, okay? Medical and holistic approaches. There's so many different things. Medical approaches, interventions. From a medical standpoint, a simple blood test can reveal your testosterone levels. For men with significantly low levels, testosterone replacement therapy may be recommended through gels, patches, or injections. Just something to really keep in mind. When carefully supervised, your TRT can help improve energy, libido, and mental clarity as well, because you get that foggy and maybe your emotions are getting involved. There's something there for you. However, it's not a quick fix. It must be combined with a healthy lifestyle shift. Actually, Nurse Peggy, you just mentioned something about that healthy lifestyle shift during the commercial break. You care to tell the audience,
Sure.
please?
There are certain medical conditions that physiologically make it harder to perform in, the way you traditionally expect and hope yourself would be performing. Diabetes and high blood pressure are one of the biggest offenders. And we have this social idea, not so much nowadays in the movies, but back when we were kids watching movies, that someone always lit up a cigarette afterwards, and you
Yeah.
had to get a buzz on or something before you could even, and I've always been kind of pragmatic, and I remember in college once saying, "Well, why do you have to get drunk then you can't feel anything?" If it's going to be real, what's wrong with me? You want to drink, so but it's just the social influences that we have.
Absolutely.
And it goes, one of the most holistic things you can do is, as far as just, you know, not just personal hygiene, but personal care, is exercise and drinking lots of water. Again, I always like to put my plug in for, hydration.
I love
But
it.
the simple things that work for all of the common medical issues, and that everything is interconnected. Our psyche, our physical, and that song, the hip bone's connected to the neck bone. Like, it's all connected.
Yeah.
And I'd like to bring up too. I'm reading more sociology reports about younger people choosing the asexual, or at least, not with anybody, but it doesn't mean you're denying that part of your body. I guess in our age, we were told if you did something to pleasure yourself, you were going to go blind. Remember that Catholic view about that?
When I
And
wear glasses.
So that's why you wear glasses. No, go ahead.
but that's part of your self-care. If you don't have a healthy partner that you want to be with and share that experience with, you're not abnormal if you choose, to pleasure yourself in any of the ways that are safe and healthy to do it. It's just recognizing your total holistic part of your needs in your body, and that's normal.
Absolutely.
You're not going to go blind, and it's just accepting yourself. And sometimes you want to, try something before you actually do it with a partner. That's all normal. There's no one way to go through that stage in life, or those stages in life. It's
For sure.
individual.
Mike, I think you were trying to say something about that.
Well, Nurse Peggy brought something up that triggered the thought.
Mhm.
It's also important to do what we call a somatic inquiry throughout life, intermittently, if you will, and ask yourself, how is my body responding to this external pressure, or to this stress, or to this kind of exercise that I'm forced to do? Um, when we don't ask our body what's going on, it it can take a whole different direction. It can lead to illness or dis-ease,
Yeah.
if you will. And so, when to do a somatic inquiry, all you have to do is think about what part of my body is affected with this that's going on right now. I just got some bad
Yep.
news. I heard a bill that I wasn't supposed to have. How is my body responding to it? And you'll notice if it's in your chest, if it's in your belly. Does it give you a headache? Does it make you sick to your stomach? Does it weaken you in the knees? All of these are somatic symptoms that are important to be aware of, and they help to balance the emotional with the physical, and
Right.
to clarify our insights. We'll know exactly what direction to turn whenever something like that happens.
Right. So we're going to transition a little to the holistic lens. We look at as a professional, I look at the entire system, not just the hormone. So foods rich in zinc, magnesium, healthy fats, avocados, nuts, that type of thing. Olive oil, I'm a big believer in olive oil, help boost natural testosterone. There are foods that do that though. Regular strength training, high intensity exercise to stimulate hormone production by using your quads and your buttocks muscles with heavier weights will increase testosterone levels. There's research studies that have proven this time and time again.
For
So
sure.
reducing alcohol, and there's Peggy's little plug in there, reducing alcohol, improving sleep, add managing stress through breath work, meditation. It can restore balance naturally. Herbs like Tribulus tertiaris, tongkat, ali, and maca root. Maca root's a common one in our society today. It may enhance stamina and hormonal vitality. So you may end up with a more of the higher level of hormone sensation using something like maca root, and perhaps most overlooked, emotional honesty and connection, especially with your partner. See, when men learn to express rather than suppress, their hormonal energy stabilizes and their vitality returns. So I know, like Mike, you probably mentioned things, natural things, meditation most likely, and a few other things.
Mhm.
Do you suggest anything else for the men out there?
Well, yeah,
Yoga.
a change in diet is definite. Is a definite. The cruciferous vegetables are good for increasing testosterone. Um, Cruciferous vegetables consist of broccoli, cauliflower,
Mm-hmm.
um, sprouts. There are many ways to prepare them that actually make them taste good. They're all the vegetables that we didn't want at.
Well, I just saw the stock market skyrocket because of. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you can stay organic, that's
Yep.
wonderful. The closer to natural you can get is the best. And
Absolutely.
just a quick tip: if you are doing testosterone therapy, you want to keep measuring your blood levels. You want to keep it has to be monitored.
Mm-hmm.
If you take something like Cialis or Tadalafil, um, you want to make sure that your blood doesn't get too thick. There's a clomid that is used to tell your brain to produce more testosterone, which can thicken your blood to some degree. And but all of those levels need to be checked regularly, because you will find some side effects that are not pleasant. Moving forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fear of mine sometimes when I do these shows, and that's why I have you guys, because I don't want to miss those important little notations, especially when you deal with a hormone. I have
Right.
people taking DHEA, and I keep telling them you need to have that checked at least once a month because you can get blood clots from that. So you also need to consider the fat intake and how rich your food intake is, because that will also increase the DHEA effect on your blood. So, I mean, there's so much involved with that, and it's very important to seek out your health, medical professional assistance. And I don't care which medical professional you use, but whatever you use for your self-sustainability, please seek that out, discuss these things with them, keep a list at home so you don't forget everything that you're taking. They need to know that. Some people will take EDTA, but that's a blood thinner too. And then the doctor puts them on blood thinners not knowing they're taking it.
That's
So
right.
there's so much there. You need to have open communication with your medical professional, just like you would with your spouse. They need to know as well. And if you're taking things, please mark them down, post them on your refrigerator. So let's say all of a sudden you black out, your wife calls 911. There's the list. Okay,
right.
it's
Well,
right
the
there.
smartphones
You
also
know,
have a function where the paramedics can go even if the phone's locked to get that information. But
Right.
it's also important to realize sometimes these all of these options have just minor side effects that you might not realize is a side effect. If your partner
Mhm.
says, "Hey, why are you so reactive all the time? You know, you need anger management and you never needed it before." It might be that something's wrong with the level of hormones that you've triggered, and you know, you're not really an a-hole. You're being chemically affected by that. And if your partner says, you know, brings it to your attention, don't be defensive about it. Sit down
right.
and say, "Am I really like, when do you see this?" And maybe it's a half hour after you take those pills. And that's usually if it's that close to a pill ingestion, chances are it's a side effect,
For sure.
Yeah,
an
good, great
unwanted side
point.
effect. Yeah.
You
Right.
know,
You can have an adverse event from something that you're taking that you may think is just a supplement, but even supplements, all supplements have negative effects too if you take too much. And even if
yeah,
you don't take too much, it still has an effect on the human body. So you still can get an effect that the doctor or medical professional needs to know about.
yeah. You know, that perfect that you mentioned that too, because I see dopamine on the market now that you can buy.
Hmm.
And my fear with things like that is that once you start taking a supplement to do something that your body normally produces, it tells your body, take a vacation. You don't need to do this because the dopamine's already here. It's the same
Right.
thing with testosterone therapy. What's going to happen with men is the testes are going to shrink if you're taking testosterone. It kind of tells
Mhm.
them, you're on hiatus. We don't need you anymore,
You
and
have
so they
enough.
they shrink.
Right.
That's it.
Mhm.
They're done.
Yeah.
But you've got to balance it out. You got to make sure that you're optimizing your body's potential to produce those things naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah, more convenient to buy the pill, but
Right.
what's the long-term effects?
And if you have to wait for that medication, you're going to do without it. And trust me, I know they have a special name, but I call it a trough level. When you take a medication that goes to the D2 receptor and captures extra dopamine and serotonin and things like that, your body will slow its own production of it down.
That's
So,
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's fine if you have a real depression problem, you're going with the doctor and he's monitoring you, that's fine. But if you're taking these over-the-counter drugs,
Mhm.
and it's affecting you, they're not going to realize it. When if you end up in the hospital, you don't have that, you can have major problems. So you need to consider all the effects, whether it's positive and negative, and sometimes there's other things that you should be doing instead. We'll be
Mhm.
talking about that in section 4 of this program. And you're listening to
I know
Medical
I was,
Intuition. Go
oh,
ahead.
where we were taking, okay, then we'll come back. Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike. What's your last comment?
No, it's fine. You just covered it. You just covered it
Right.
because your body stops producing it if you take it too much. So yeah,
Right, and that's like he was saying, even the testes and everything basically shrinks a little bit because your body has so much testosterone from taking maybe too much medication. And if you do see side effects, let your doctor know. Maybe he'll lower the dose.
that's
You're
right.
listening to Medical Intuitive Insights with Dr. Gloria Warren. Today's message is for every man standing at the crossroads of change, the moment when life begins to whisper, slow down, listen, transform. Don't go anywhere. When we return, we'll talk about how to navigate manopause, with courage, compassion, and spiritual strength. It's not the end. We'll be right back.
Author, radio show host and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk.
Welcome back. I'm Dr. Gloria Warren. If you ever wondered whether men or a man experience their own form of midlife transformation, the answer is yes, they do. And it's not something to fear, it's something to honor. Let's continue exploring the wisdom, balance, and renewal that can come when we embrace the change with open hearts. And I call it the spiritual awakening. In ancient traditions, this stage of life was honored as the rise of the elder spirit. The warrior becomes the teacher, the protector becomes the guide. When testosterone softens, the heart opens. Men often find themselves drawn toward reflection, healing, and service. Spiritually, Manopause can represent a shift from the outer pursuit of power to the inner discovery of peace. It's an invitation to embrace the gentleness without losing strength, to lead with presence rather than physical pressure. It's not the end of masculinity. It's the evolution of it. So, within this dialogue, I really come to focus that it's a stage that's honored in the rise of the elder spirit. And I'm not a man, so I have Coach Mike here because I think he can enlighten us on what a man goes through with his sense of power and how perhaps it can transition to a higher level. Do you have any good advice for anyone on that one? I know you do.
Well, it's not unlike men to pursue excellence. They want to be the best. We want to be the best at what we do. And we want to be remembered for that. The good thing to realize is that as natural leaders, we want to protect, we want to offer the protection, we want to raise our children, we want them to be healthy, and we want to be a good contribution to the earth.
Protector, right?
That's right, the protector.
Protector. Mm-hmm.
And so if you imagine your leader walking through the woods, doing switchbacks and all of these things, a good leader is going to say, watch out, there's a stone there. Oh, I just slipped on this thing, watch out. It doesn't mean that you don't make those mistakes. It doesn't mean you don't trip, you don't fall. What it means is that you learn from that experience. To be able to harvest that wisdom and share it with our, the ones that are after us, we need to be able to reflect on them. And it takes time. It takes a quiet space. It takes that mental clarity to do so. some of the most honorable men that I have met in my lifetime, and that have admired in my research and work, are men that were very, very mindful and came to a point and learned to embrace the quietness of life at some time in their life. Some even began at an earlier age, like monks, Hindu monks, and uh, people in monasteries that practice meditation to gain that wisdom. It
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
it doesn't mean that we have to sacrifice a life where we have, social interaction and all the wonderful things that life has to offer. But it does mean that we do need to take the time to be mindful, to be spiritual, to understand what love really is, and to understand the many forms of love and how people interpret love. When we begin to understand each other, we begin to understand ourselves even more. And a
Right.
lot of a lot of times what we're seeing in people is a projection of ourselves. Those fears that we have, we project onto others, and sometimes we become judgmental because we can be our worst enemy sometimes.
Hmm.
But with a compassion, with compassion and empathy, we can tell someone, look, it's not your fault. It's not a weakness. This is something that's going to happen. This is what you can look forward to. This is what you can expect to happen. When it does happen, don't worry about it. This is what you do. So to be able to do that, we have to be mindful of when it's going on, when it is actually happening in our lives, even our younger years.
Good point. Do you have anything to add to that, Nurse Peggy?
I think we also have a responsibility, both parents, to be aware of the example that you're setting for your children.
Mhm.
When I remember, and I went to college very young, too young, but on the way to college, my father's saying, well, there's going to be a lot of older men there. And I knew where he was going. I'd never had that talk with my parents. They just didn't do that.
Hmm.
But I knew I didn't want to have that talk. And I didn't know what that talk involved. I got educated at college too young. But I remember something came up with one of my grandchildren, uh, and I realized, I said to his father later, "Hey, have you had that talk with your son?" And he said, "Of course I have. He's almost 13." And I said, "Well, you realize it's not just one talk. It's a talk that continues all the way through and his, adult into adulthood. Because your responsibility isn't done if you explain to your kid how the birds and bees work." Um, so it really it's a big responsibility, but if you have a good attitude towards life and open communication, the whole family
Right.
benefits.
And there we're right back to communication, and it's not the end of masculinity, it's the evolution of it. I just want to thank you, Coach Mike and Nurse Peggy, for being here with us today. As always, your insights based on experience is very valuable and greatly appreciated. Coach Mike, how can our viewers get a hold of you?
If you go to www.olcp.life, you'll see my website. It's Optimal Life Coaching and Practices. You can also reach out to my number. It's 508-648-0825. I'll be glad to lend a listen.
And Nurse Peggy has a show on Thursdays called The Holistic Nurse. Phenomenal. Go ahead and check her out as well. And how can the viewers reach you, Nurse Peggy?
Well, my show is the channel is The Holistic Nurse with Peggy Smith. It airs at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. I think I'm right after you, Coach Mike, aren't I? I think, or right before we're
Yeah,
something
I'm
like
at
that. So we're both on Thursdays, yeah. And you can just, send an email, notjusthypnosis@gmail.com. And, it's been a great show, I think. Gloria, thanks for having us today.
Oh, my pleasure. And Manopause is the soul's call for renewal. It's the body's way of asking, how can I live with more balance, purpose, and authenticity? So, to every man and every woman listening beside him, honor the stage with compassion. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Warren, 715-892-7500. If you need to get a hold of me, text is best. It's lifeconnectinstitute.org. That's the best place to look at my website. I'm Gloria Warren, and remember, True strength is found not in resistance, but in alignment. So God bless everybody out there, and there for the grace of God go I. Thank you and goodbye.
This has been Medical Intuitive Insights with host Dr. Gloria Warren. Tune in each week as Gloria shares over 40 years of experience and yearns to provide knowledge derived from intuition and research. Wednesdays, 2 p.m. Eastern.